The friendship between Richard Winters and Lewis Nixon began at Officer Candidate School in Fort Benning during April 1942. From the moment they met, the two formed a strong bond and were initially assigned to the same platoon, with Winters serving as platoon leader and Nixon as his assistant. Although Nixon spent most of the war assigned to battalion or regimental headquarters, he remained closely connected to both Winters and Easy Company. In 1945, when Winters assumed command of the 2nd Battalion, he stepped in to help Nixon after Colonel Robert Sink had grown frustrated with Nixon's drinking habits and unpredictable behavior, despite his outstanding performance on staff. Winters took Nixon onto his own battalion staff, and the two remained together for the rest of the war. In a letter written after the war, Winters remarked that Nixon could very well have become a general had he made different career choices during the conflict. Historians and fans have long wondered how the two men formed and maintained such a lasting friendship. The two were very different personalities. Winters neither drank nor spent much time socializing with fellow officers. Instead, he devoted his spare moments to studying military manuals and writing letters to his pen pal in the United States, Dieter Ullmann. Nixon, by contrast, drank heavily and was a frequent visitor to the Officers' Club. Another of Winters' close friends, Harry Welsh, also enjoyed drinking. Nixon was known for his relationships with women and carried on an affair with a woman from Aldbourne who eventually became his second wife. Following his divorce from his first wife in 1945, Nixon continued living a lifestyle that would likely have conflicted with Winters' deeply religious beliefs. The most reasonable explanation is that Winters saw qualities in Nixon that he respected and valued. Winters was often highly critical of many officers in the 2nd Battalion, including Commanding Officer Robert Strayer, yet he consistently spoke highly of Nixon. After the war, Nixon offered Winters employment at the family business, Nixon Nitration Works, where Winters worked as a personnel manager. However, he struggled under the management of Lewis's father, Stanhope Nixon, and left when he was called back to active service during the Korean War. Although he was ultimately exempted from duty, Winters later returned hoping to reclaim his position. By then the role had already been filled. Since Lewis was frequently away traveling, Winters did not receive the support he may have expected. After a second divorce, Nixon met Grace Umezawa in 1956. She became his third wife, and the two remained together until Nixon's death on January 11, 1995. Regarding the book and television series, Nixon appears to have played only a minor role behind the scenes. There is no evidence of correspondence between Nixon and Stephen Ambrose, and much of the information included about Nixon in the book came directly from Winters. Members of Easy Company rarely spoke about Nixon. One of the few details commonly mentioned was his refusal to shave, earning him the nickname Black Beard. This is somewhat surprising considering nearly every known photograph shows him clean-shaven. One officer who was less than impressed with Nixon was Lieutenant Ed Shames. After Normandy, Shames was assigned to battalion headquarters as Nixon's assistant. He later recalled growing tired of repeatedly helping Nixon when he had drunk too much and eventually requested a transfer. Lynn Buck Compton, who joined Easy Company in Aldbourne before D-Day, also experienced tension with both Winters and Nixon. Nixon reportedly dismissed Compton as little more than a jock, while Winters felt the young lieutenant spent too much time socializing with enlisted men. Later, during the Battle of Bastogne, Compton witnessed his close friends Bill Guarnier and Joe Toye suffer devastating wounds from enemy artillery. After leaving the scene, saying he was searching for Easy Company's commander, Lieutenant Norman Dyke, Compton was criticized by Winters, who believed he had removed himself from the fight. Winters ultimately supported his relief from duty. Years after the war, during an Easy Company reunion, Donald Malarkey, one of Compton's closest wartime friends, overheard Nixon refer to Buck as a coward. Malarkey confronted him and asked how many Silver Stars Nixon himself had earned during the war. Although Winters and Compton remained friends, many of Winters' letters suggest he was capable of holding grudges for a long time. I have always felt that Nixon received a disproportionate amount of attention in the television series, particularly considering he left Easy Company relatively early in its development. There were certainly moments when his inclusion was appropriate, just as it was for officers such as Colonel Sink and Lieutenant Colonel Strayer. Much of Nixon's prominence can be traced to Winters' influence on Ambrose and, later, the show's writers. Several men who played important roles in Easy Company's history received little or no attention. Many veterans expressed similar opinions. Nevertheless, Ron Livingston delivered an outstanding performance and transformed the historical Nixon into one of the series' most memorable characters. In reality, very few people truly knew Lewis Nixon. Historical records concerning him are limited, and most of what is known comes through Winters' recollections. This naturally introduces a degree of bias because of their close friendship. That does not mean Winters' memories were inaccurate, but it does show how one person's perspective can heavily shape a historical narrative. Examples such as Albert Blythe, Norman Dyke, Roy Cobb, Gerald Lorraine, and David Webster demonstrate how some individuals can be judged harshly, while others are remembered more favorably than the evidence may justify.